Alright folks, grab your blood pressure meds and settle in, because we're about to rip the band-aid off South Africa's latest grand delusion, the National Health Insurance Act, the NHI. Welcome back to the channel where we don't sugarcoat the ANC's disastrous pipe dreams, we dissect them with the fury they deserve. Buckle up, Buttercup. This isn't just another policy, this is a full-blown, taxpayer-funded heist disguised as healthcare reform, and it stinks to high heaven of desperation and political opportunism. Get ready for a deep dive into why this steaming pile of legislation is nothing but a targeted assault on the wallets and well-being of the minority white population already carrying this sinking nation on their backs, while the ANC dangles free goodies like cheap candy to buy off the majority vote. Let's expose this farce. Imagine South Africa 2025, not some futuristic utopia, but the same old grim reality where healthcare is a brutal lottery. On one side, you've got the crumbling public sector, supposedly serving around 84% of the population, overwhelmingly black and poor, struggling in underfunded, overcrowded death traps they call hospitals and clinics. It's a disgrace. On the other, the private sector servicing roughly 16%, largely white, largely affluent, accessing actual functioning medical care through their schemes. Unequal? Absolutely. A crime against humanity? You bet. But hold on to your hats, because the ANC's solution, this NHI Act signed with great fanfare by President Cyril Ramaphosa on May 15, 2024, isn't fixing anything. It's taking a sledgehammer to the only part of the system that does work. And who gets crushed? The same taxpayers, yes, disproportionately white South Africans, already stretched thinner than the ANC's credibility, and the skilled doctors and nurses actually delivering care. Meanwhile, the ANC salivates over the black majority vote, whispering sweet nothings about free healthcare, just another shiny trinket in their endless parade of broken promises and handouts. So, how does this grand theft operate? The NHI Act sets up a magical national health insurance fund. Sounds lovely, right? All warm and fuzzy? They call it the single purchaser and single payer for everyone's healthcare. Noble words masking a brutal reality. This fund isn't powered by unicorn tears, it's fueled by your taxes. And guess what? South Africa's tax base is a tiny, exhausted island in a vast ocean of need. Get this, in the 2023-24 tax year, only around 7.4 million individuals actually paid personal income tax in a country bursting at the seams with over 62 million people. Let that sink in. A microscopic fraction footing the bill for the multitude. And who makes up a massive chunk of that microscopic fraction? White South Africans. They constitute roughly 7.3% of the population, around 4.5 million people, Stats SA 2022, yet they contribute a wildly disproportionate share of the income tax revenue. Why? Because, shockingly, they often have higher average incomes. The South African Revenue Service SARS reported that for the 2022 tax year, the top 3% of individual taxpayers contributed a staggering 64.8% of personal income tax. Guess who's heavily represented in that top 3%? Now, the NHI's funding plan, it leans heavily on general tax revenue. Guess who? A new payroll tax. Guess who employs people? And a surcharge on personal income tax. Guess who pays the most already? It's pure, unadulterated extortion. You're already bankrolling social grants for over 18 million people, free housing, subsidized electricity, water, the ANC's loyalty bribes. Now they demand you pay for free doctor visits for everyone, including refugees and certain categories of foreigners, while you pray your own lights stay on. The sheer, breathtaking audacity is enough to make you scream. And this free healthcare fantasy, the NHI promises services magically free at the point of care for citizens, permanent residents, refugees, and apparently a random selection of foreign visitors. That's a lot of mouths to feed at the taxpayer trough. Who benefits most? Obviously, the 84% reliant on the collapsing public system, predominantly black and lower income, sounds charitable? Don't be naive. This isn't Mother Teresa at work. It's the ANC's well-oiled vote-buying machine shifting into overdrive. They've been in power since 1994, and their playbook is ancient history, dangle-free stuff funded by a minority that can't easily flee or fight back. Free housing? Check. Free basic electricity and water? Check. Social grants ballooning to over 18 million recipients, costing the fiscus north of 230 billion rands annually? Check. Now, add free healthcare to the bribe list. It's a cynical resurrection of the Freedom Charter's 1955 universal free medical care promise, dusted off and repackaged for the 2025 election cycle. They've been peddling this NHI snake oil since their 2009 manifesto. Coincidence? Please. It's the oldest trick in the book. Promise the moon with someone else's money just before an election. But the insult doesn't stop at your emptied wallet. This monstrosity is a death sentence for actual healthcare providers. Doctors, specialists, nurses, private hospitals. They're staring into the abyss of a system designed to gut their autonomy, cap their earnings, and bury them in Kafkaesque bureaucracy. The almighty NHI fund will dictate what they can charge. To even get a whiff of a contract, they'll need to grovel for certification from the perpetually underperforming Office of Health Standards Compliance, registration with statutory councils, and jump through hoops of vague performance criteria. And who are they contracting with? The same government whose negligence led to the Life Esidimeni tragedy, where 144 mental health patients died horrifically. The same government whose own health standards compliance reports detail public hospitals crumbling into literal filth and disrepair. A 2019 Solidarity Research Institute survey found healthcare workers had precisely zero confidence in the Department of Health's ability to run a lemonade stand, let alone the NHI. How is a government that can't stock a clinic with bandages supposed to micromanage a national healthcare fund? The mind boggles, then explodes in rage. Unsurprisingly, the private sector isn't rolling over. The South African Medical Association petition against the NHI bill garnered over 78,000 signatures by October 2023. Opposition parties? The DA, EFF, IFP, even they see the train wreck coming. Why the panic? Because the NHI doesn't regulate, it annihilates. Those vital medical schemes currently serving the 16%. The NHI reduces them to offering pathetic complementary cover for scraps the fund deigns not to cover. It's a death warrant for the private sector, which employs thousands of skilled professionals and delivers genuinely world-class care you won't find in a public ward. Adrian Gore, CEO of Discovery Health, practically begged for private sector collaboration, warning the NHI is pure fantasy without it. Business Leadership, South Africa's CEO, bluntly stated the obvious: the tax hikes needed will strangle the economy. FTI Consulting's analysis for Business Unity SA predicted the need for billions in new taxes. For what? To prop up a centralized government-run disaster in waiting that will drive skilled professionals out of the country and leave patients, all patients, worse off. The sheer willful ignorance is staggering. So, who gets royally screwed? Let's be brutally honest. White South Africans already taxed into oblivion face another brutal financial assault. They're the ones who chose private healthcare, paying premiums out of nosebleed salaries specifically to avoid the public sector's chaos. Now they're forced to bankroll a system they won't touch with a barge pole while watching their hard-won access to decent private care evaporate. And the healthcare heroes, doctors, nurses, specialists, they face a dystopian future where their skills are commoditized, their incomes capped by incompetent bureaucrats, and their professional judgment overruled by NHI pen pushers. The winners? The ANC, crowing about universal healthcare while pocketing the votes of the 84% they've just promised another unsustainable freebie. But don't mistake this for equality. This is about raw political power, centralizing control, rewarding political loyalty, and systematically punishing the productive minority who've propped up this failing state for decades. It's vindictive, it's short-sighted, it's economically suicidal. The motive? Crystal clear. It's politics, pure and rancid. The ANC's been peddling health equity scams since their 1990s National Health Plan that achieved precisely nothing. The NHI itself has been lumbering through green papers, white papers, and endless task teams since 2009, but the timing? Ramrodding it through in 2023 and signing it in May 2024? That reeks of pure, unadulterated electioneering. And the cherry on top? The Gauteng High Court ruling in July 2024 striking down parts of the existing National Health Act, the Certificate of Need nonsense, as unconstitutional. If the government can't even justify that bit of bureaucratic overreach, how in hell's name are they going to run a massive, centralized healthcare monopoly? The NHI isn't about health, it's about control, it's about votes. It's about the ANC clinging to power with the last vestiges of other people's money and goodwill, wrapped in a cheap cloak of faux compassion. The hypocrisy is vomit-inducing. This is where the white-hot fury is not just understandable, it's necessary. White South Africans aren't just taxpayers, they are, like it or not, the battered backbone of an economy systematically looted and mismanaged for 30 years. They aren't demanding palaces, they're screaming for basic fairness. Why should they be bled dry to fund a doomed system they explicitly opted out of? Why should they pay for the ANC's latest vote-buying spree when their own safety net, built on decades of hard work and sacrifice, is being deliberately dismantled? Why should our best doctors and nurses be shackled to a failing state apparatus that doesn't value their skills and will drive them overseas? The NHI isn't progress towards equality. It's a guaranteed highway to explosive resentment, catastrophic inefficiency, and the total collapse of what remains of quality healthcare. And the sarcasm? It's the only sane response when the ANC, presiding over public hospitals that are literal health hazards and a tax base fleeing the country, has the gall to preach universal health coverage. Call it what it is, a brazen, expensive, destructive vote-buying stunt that will leave every single South African, except the ANC cadres, worse off. It's a con job of monumental proportions. So, the brutal truth? The NHI is a toxic deal for South Africa, but it's a targeted poison pill for the minority white population and the healthcare professionals who haven't yet fled. It's theft, it's coercion, it's political malpractice dressed up as social justice. It's time to stop being polite. It's time to push back hard. Join the channel membership. Your support fuels the fight against this insanity. Smash that super thanks button. Every cent keeps this truth-telling alive. Let those ads play. Watch them for 30 seconds. Consider it your small investment in resistance. Subscribe, like, share this video everywhere, and rage in the comments below. Make your voice heard. We need to pile on the pressure, demand accountability, and fight like hell for a South Africa where fairness isn't just a punchline to the ANC's cruel joke. Stay furious, stay vocal, and for the love of all that's sane, let's keep it brutally real. They're counting on us to stay silent. Don't give them the satisfaction.